In 41 years as a priest, I have stood beside more caskets than I can count. I have held the hands of widows in the hour after their husbands were taken. I have sat with families in funeral home offices, under fluorescent lights, exhausted, grief-soaked, while a man in a dark suit laid out their options on a laminated sheet of paper. And I want to tell you something. There is a conversation that almost never happens in those rooms. A conversation that should happen, that needs to happen. And today, I'm going to have it with you, because you deserve to know the truth. I'm Father David. I've spent over 40 years walking with people through the hardest moments of their lives. And this one, the question of what we do with the body after death, is one of the most spiritually serious questions I know. And most people are making decisions about it without the full picture. Now, before I go any further, I want to say something directly to anyone watching who has already chosen cremation for someone they loved or who is planning it for themselves. Please stay with me. What I am about to share is not meant to bring you condemnation. It is meant to bring you clarity. There is a difference, and by the time we finish today, I believe you will feel that difference in your heart. Let me start here. The Catholic Church does permit cremation. That is true. And I know that many of you have heard that, perhaps from a deacon, perhaps from a well-meaning friend, perhaps from the funeral home itself, and it settled the question. The Church allows it, so it must be fine. But here is what is almost never said in the same breath. The Church permits it, but she does not prefer it. She permits it under specific conditions, with specific requirements about what must happen to the remains afterward. And those conditions, those requirements, are being ignored in the vast majority of Catholic cremations happening today. Quietly, without anyone explaining why they matter. Without anyone explaining what is at stake. I want to read you something from the Vatican's own document, Ad Resurgendum Cum Christo, issued in 2016 by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, approved personally by Pope Francis. It says, and I am going to give you the heart of it, that the Church recommends that the body of the deceased be buried in a cemetery or other sacred place. It goes further. It says that the ashes of the cremated must be kept in a sacred place, a cemetery, a columbarium, a church. And it explicitly states that scattering ashes, keeping them at home, dividing them among family members, these things are not permitted, not simply discouraged, not merely frowned upon, not permitted. How many of you have sat in a backyard and watched someone's ashes scattered over a garden because that's what she would have wanted? How many urns are sitting on fireplace mantles right now in the homes of good, faithful Catholic women because no one ever told them it was not supposed to be that way? I have seen this more times than I want to count, and every time the family thought they were honoring their loved one. They were doing their best. They simply were not given the truth. And the truth goes deeper than the rules. It goes all the way down into something that the Church has always understood about the human body. Something ancient, something sacred, something that touches directly on what the soul is, what it has been through, and what it is waiting for. That is what I want to show you today. Because the question is not just what we do with a body after death. The question, the deeper question, the one that keeps some of you awake at night, even if you cannot name exactly why, is what God thinks about it, what the spiritual reality is, what the Church has always known, and why she has always, from the very beginning of Christianity, buried her dead. We are only at the beginning. And the part that matters most to you personally, I haven't reached it yet. I want to put you in a room I know very well. It is early morning. The kind of morning where the light comes in gray and soft through the curtains. You are sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where you have sat for decades, and there is a cup of tea in front of you that has gone cold because you forgot to drink it. And you are thinking about someone you lost. Maybe it has been 6 months, maybe it has been 6 years, and somewhere in the back of your mind, underneath the grief, underneath the ordinary business of the day, there is a question you have never quite been able to silence. Did I do right by them? I have sat across from women who carried that question for years. One of them, I will call her Dorothy, came to see me on a Thursday afternoon in October, about 3 years after her husband passed. She was a daily mass woman, a rosary woman. She had raised 5 children in the faith, and she had loved her husband for 52 years. She sat in my office and she folded her hands in her lap, the way women of her generation do, very still, very composed. And then she said something I will never forget. She said, "Father, I think I made a mistake, and I don't know if God can fix it." Her husband's ashes were in an urn on the mantel in her living room. She had kept them there because she could not bear to let go, because putting them in the ground felt like losing him all over again. And every morning she walked past that urn, and every morning she felt something she could not name, a kind of unease, a spiritual restlessness, a feeling that something was unfinished. She was not wrong to feel that. I want to be very careful here, because I am not saying God abandoned her husband. I am not saying grace cannot reach into even the most imperfect circumstances. God is not a bureaucrat. He is a father. But Dorothy's instinct that something was unfinished, that something in the spiritual order had not been honored, that instinct was not anxiety. That instinct was her soul recognizing a truth that her mind had not yet been given the words to understand. Here is the truth, and I want you to hear it not as a judgment, but as something that I believe with my whole heart you have a right to know. The human body is not a shell. It is not a container that the soul uses and then discards. The Church has always taught, and I believe it with my whole heart, that the body and the soul are united in a way that is permanent and sacred. When we die, that union is temporarily interrupted, but it is not destroyed. St. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 15, one of the most extraordinary passages in all of Scripture. The body is sown in corruption. It is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. Paul is talking about your body, your specific body, the one that knelt at the communion rail, the one that held your children when they were small, the one that has ached and aged and carried everything you have carried. Paul is saying that body will be raised, transformed, glorified, but raised. This is why the Church buries her dead, not as a cultural habit, not as a preference, as a theological statement, as a proclamation. This body matters. This body has a future. This body is not garbage to be disposed of. This body is seed. Now, in a moment I am going to tell you something that very few people know about what the early Christians understood regarding the body after death, and why the enemies of Christianity in the first centuries specifically targeted the graves of the martyrs, because they understood something about Christian burial that we have largely forgotten. And when I tell you, I think it is going to change the way you see this entire question. But first I need to name something else, because I know that for some of you, the reason cremation entered the picture was not indifference. It was money. It was distance. It was a family that could not agree. It was exhaustion in the middle of grief. It was someone at the funeral home who presented it as the simple, modern, reasonable choice. And you were in no condition to ask harder questions. You were doing the best you could with what you had. I know that. God knows that. And I want you to hold on to that, because what comes next is not about guilt. It is about understanding. It is about knowing from this day forward what is true, so that you can act from that truth, for yourself, for the people you love, for the ones who will come after you. Let me take you back to the year 177 AD, the city of Lyon in what is now France. There was a community of Christians there, small, frightened, extraordinary. They had been arrested, they had been tortured, and when they were finally killed, some of them thrown to wild animals in the arena, some of them burned, the Roman authorities did something deliberate, something calculated. They gathered the ashes and the remains of those martyrs, and they threw them into the Rhone River, scattered them, made sure there was nothing left to bury. And the early Christians understood exactly what that act meant. It was not just desecration, it was a theological attack. The Romans had watched these Christians for generations, watched them carry their dead to the catacombs with reverence, watched them mark those graves, watched them gather at those graves to pray. And the Romans understood, perhaps better than many modern Catholics do, that for Christians the body in the ground was not an ending, it was a beginning. It was a declaration of faith in the resurrection. And if you could erase the body, scatter it, destroy it, make it disappear, you were saying with great violence, your resurrection is a lie. The Church has always known this. From the catacombs to the great cathedrals, she has always placed the bodies of her dead in sacred ground, oriented toward the east, toward the rising sun, toward the return of Christ, because she believed with absolute conviction that those bodies would rise. Now, I want to address directly the question that is in the title of this video. What does the soul suffer? I need to be precise here, because this is a place where I have seen a great deal of confusion and a great deal of fear that is not always well directed. The soul, once separated from the body at death, is in God's hands, completely. The condition of the soul after death, whether it moves toward purgatory, toward heaven, toward whatever God in His mercy has prepared, that is not determined by what happens to the body afterward. God is not limited by our choices about the remains. He is sovereign. He is merciful. He is not standing at the gates of heaven checking a box marked properly buried. So if you are carrying fear for a loved one whose ashes were scattered, hear me. God's mercy is not that fragile. But, and this is the part that very few priests talk about openly, and I believe you need to hear it, there is something real that happens in the spiritual realm when the body is not treated with the reverence the Church intends. Not a punishment, not a sentence, but a kind of disorder, a disruption in the right order of things that the soul, in ways we cannot fully see or measure, is connected to. There is a woman I walked with, I will call her Rose, whose son had died suddenly in his 40s. A good man, a complicated man. He had left the faith in his 20s and never quite returned. His wife, who was not Catholic, had his body cremated and kept the ashes at home. Rose came to me not once, not twice. She came to me for 2 years, and every time she described the same thing. A restlessness she felt in her spirit when she prayed for him. A sense that something was unresolved, not in God, in the situation. I prayed with Rose, and eventually, gently, over time, the family agreed to have the ashes interred in a Catholic cemetery. A simple ceremony, a prayer, a place in sacred ground. Rose told me afterward, and I have never forgotten her words. She said, "Father, I felt him rest." I cannot explain that theologically with precision. I cannot give you a catechism paragraph that maps exactly onto what Rose experienced. But I have seen it enough times, that specific peace that comes when the remains of a loved one are finally placed in sacred ground, that I believe something real happens. Something in the spiritual order is honored. Something is completed. This is what the Church means when she says the body must be treated with reverence. Not because God cannot work around our failures, but because we are embodied creatures, and the way we treat bodies, living or dead, means something. It speaks. It declares what we believe about the resurrection. It declares what we believe about the person who lived in that body. It declares what we believe about where that body is going. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 2300, says that the bodies of the dead must be treated with respect and charity, that burying the dead is a corporal work of mercy, not a preference, not a cultural nicety, an act of love that has spiritual weight. And I want to tell you something that changed the way I pray for the dead. In the book of Tobit, one of the most underread books in the entire Bible, Tobit risks his life repeatedly to bury the dead. Jews who had been killed and left in the street. He went out at night and he buried them. And God honored that. God called it righteousness. And that brings me to the question I suspect brought some of you here today. Not the history, not the theology, the practical question. The one that is sitting in your living room right now, on a shelf, or in a closet, or in the back of your mind. What do you do now? What do you do if you are sitting with an urn on your mantle? Or if you are planning your own arrangements? Or if you are watching a family member make a decision you are not sure about? That is what I want to give you in these final minutes. Not fear, not condemnation, but a clear and loving path forward. Let me come back to Dorothy. After she told me she thought she had made a mistake, after she sat in my office with her hands folded in her lap and that weight in her eyes, I did not give her a lecture. I did not hand her a document. I said, "Dorothy, what would you like to do?" And she looked at me for a long moment. And then she said, "I want to put him somewhere holy. I want him to have a place." We arranged it together. A Catholic cemetery not far from where she lived. A simple interment. Her 5 children came. 2 of them had drifted from the faith, but they came. We said prayers. We commended her husband by name to the mercy of God, and we placed him in the ground. Afterward, Dorothy stood at that grave for a long time, just standing. And when she finally turned to walk back to the car, she looked at me and she said something I carry with me to this day. She said, "I didn't know how heavy it was until I put it down." That is what I want for you. Whatever you are carrying today, whatever question brought you to this video, I want you to be able to put it down. So let me give you something practical, something clear, something you can hold on to. If you have the ashes of a loved one at home, whether on a mantle, in a closet, in a box you have not known what to do with, the path forward is simple, and it is never too late. Contact a Catholic cemetery in your area. Tell them what you have. They will help you. The Church does not turn away those who come seeking to do right by their dead, no matter how much time has passed. You can have those ashes interred in sacred ground. You can give your loved one a place, and you can give yourself the peace that Dorothy found on that quiet afternoon, the peace of knowing that you have honored them in the way the Church has always honored her dead. If you are making your own arrangements, if you are one of those practical, faithful women who has her affairs in order and wants to make sure everything is done properly, I want to encourage you to consider burial. I know it costs more. I know it requires more planning. But I have never stood at a graveside and thought this was not worth it. There is something that happens when a body is committed to the earth with prayer and faith and the full rites of the Church. Something that words cannot entirely capture, but that everyone present can feel. It is a declaration. This person mattered. This body mattered. And we truly believe, that this is not the end. And if you are watching this because someone in your family is making a decision right now, a child, a grandchild, a sibling, and you are not sure how to speak to them about it, I want to give you permission to say something. You do not need to be a theologian. You do not need to win an argument. You simply need to say, I learned something recently that I want to share with you. Can I tell you? Plant the seed, say the words, and then trust God with the rest. That has always been our job. Plant the seed and trust God with the rest. I have been a priest for over 40 years. I have learned many things in those years about grace, about suffering, about the extraordinary patience of God with His children. But one of the things I have learned most deeply is this: the truth is never something to be afraid of. The truth, even when it is hard, even when it asks something of us, is always an act of love. God does not hide the truth from us to protect us. He reveals it to us because He trusts us with it, because He believes we can receive it and be transformed by it. That is what I have tried to do with you today. Not frighten you, not condemn you, trust you with the truth, because I believe you can receive it. Because I have seen in 41 years what happens when good and faithful people are finally given the full picture. They rise to it. Every single time, they rise to it. If what we have explored together today has touched something real in your heart, if it has answered a question you have been carrying, or given you words for something you have long felt but could not name, then I invite you to stay close. Subscribe to this channel and join me every week, because there is so much more that God wants you to know about the faith, about the spiritual life, about the things that are happening in the unseen realm that touch your life every single day. And I am deeply honored, truly honored, to be the one who gets to share these things with you. We have barely scratched the surface of what I want to tell you. And before you go, may God's peace rest upon you today and upon everyone you are carrying in your heart. May He remind you in the quiet places, in the early morning, in the gray light at the kitchen table, that you are known by name and you are loved beyond measure. Go with His blessing.